in looking at this whole idea of fundamentalism, no matter what religion it comes, in, I think there's some very common roots to it. Yeah. And I say this because I have some interesting karma to find myself sitting next to religious fundamentalists on long airplane flights. Yes. Yeah. One time I was with one guy who was talking about flying saucers as we flew from Singapore to the US. Yeah. He was a flying saucer fundamentalist. So much so that the flight attendant at one point came to me and said, "Would you like me to reseat you?" She knew what was going on. But other times it's just been usually, Christian fundamentalists. Although when I was in Israel, I met a lot of Jewish fundamentalists as well. Yeah. So, everywhere you go. So my take on it is this, my observation. And, you might like to contribute, later, and we have a little bit of discussion. Share your reflections. But my observation is that nowadays the world is it's global. Yeah, news travels very quickly. The world is changing very quickly. We are faced with a number of significant issues that as a planet we need to take care of. The what are we going to do about nuclear arms? Yeah, what are we going to do about climate change? What are we going to do about immigration and almost every country having a multi-ethnic population? Yeah, nowadays you can't find any, I don't think, or maybe just one or two countries in which the whole population is uniformly the same ethnic group and the same religion. Yeah. It's even in Saudi Arabia, which many people really consider fundamentalist, you have the Wahhabis and you have the Sunnis, and it's not a homogeneous population. So what are we going to do as a planet when we have countries where the population is not homogeneous? Hmm? And even if it is homogeneous, we human beings still find something to fight over, don't we? Yeah. So in this kind of world where things are changing very fast, mass communication and so on, I think that many people feel rather insecure. Yeah, there's a feeling of insecurity, instability. And so in order to cope with it, people want to have an identity. Yeah, they feel, I need an identity in this global marketplace with so many religions and ethnicities and races and languages. I need an identity. I need a home group to which I belong. Yeah. And so people often adopt a religion or whatever as their own in a very fundamentalist way, kind of really grasping onto it. How the Buddha talks about the grasping at I and mine? Yeah? So grasping at religion in that way. I am a whatever it is. This is my religion. And in that way, feeling, okay, now I know who I am. Mm-hmm. And so I've seen in the States anyway, people who, for example, because I grew up in a Jewish family that was not religious at all. But I observed many people from very Reformed Judaism then becoming Orthodox Jews who were extremely strict, because in Judaism there's this whole thing about you don't cook a calf in its mother's milk. So you have to have two sets of dishes and two kinds of sinks and, two kinds of ovens and, because God forbid there's one molecule of milk that touches one molecule of meat, and you've transgressed God's order. And, I see people who grew up like not keeping kosher. This kosher is this kind of diet, and not keeping kosher, but then, wanting an identity, wanting to belong, becoming Orthodox Jews, and then keeping kosher, in a very extreme way. Somebody was recently telling me that, they went to a relative's house that was now kosher, and, she couldn't even help in the kitchen for fear of putting a fork in the wrong place. Yeah? Yeah. But these kinds of things, like, become a symbol of your identity and somehow a symbol of your religious purity. And you'll see in this example, I mean, milk and meat and one molecule of each, and, isn't that a bit extreme? In my view, it's a bit extreme. In their view, it gives them a sense of security in knowing who they are and doing the right thing. Yeah? And so in the same way, in other religions, you find people, going back. I don't even know if they're really going back to the fundamentals of their own religion, or if they're picking out certain aspects and becoming fundamentalist about those aspects. For example, one airplane flight, I sat next to a young man, because the area of America where the Abbey is, there's a lot of, it's very, very conservative, and there's a number of people who are quite, some who are quite fundamentalist. He was a young man, and usually in America, young people are, stretching their wings, and they want to explore this and that, and they're quite liberal politically and like that. This young man, not at all. Yeah, very conservative. And he was telling me, he was only maybe 24, 25, yeah. So he was looking to start his career, and he wanted to get married, and he had this very specific idea of the way his marriage was going to be, yeah, that his wife was going to stay at home. She was not going to work, not allowed to work. Yeah, he would provide for the family, doing the version of what a man was from many centuries ago, And she was going to be in the role of a woman, as it was, a long time ago, and stay at home, have a lot of babies, never mind the fact that the world is overpopulated. Yeah, have a lot of babies. They weren't going to send their children to public school because that might corrupt them. They were going to homeschool their children. Yeah, and just completely like this. And I was like, oh my goodness. Yeah, I want, and he seemed very sure about finding a young woman who would go along with this. Yeah, because in America now, women, there's more women in the workplace, more women graduating from college than men. Yeah, in the workplace, maybe about equal, even though men get paid more. Yeah, but women are really, quite active in society and doing a lot of stuff. They're not stay-at-home moms baking cookies. Yeah, that's what people thought Hillary Clinton should do. Yeah, she was much too bright to bake cookies. Yeah, that she left that for Laura Bush. Yeah, whose husband was busy, what do you call it, assenting to torture in the CIA prisons. I shouldn't get diverted by talking about American politics, though. So it was quite interesting for me that he just had this idea of, how he was going to live and what it was going to be and be like. And I thought, wow, I wonder if he'll have a happy marriage, because I was thinking of a modern woman trying to live in that kind of relationship. I personally would go totally nuts. Yeah. Yeah, no, he wasn't a Mormon, actually. Yeah, it was just some other kind of Christian. Yeah. Then there was another flight where I talked to another young man. And he was telling me how, his, brand of Christianity was the one and only correct one. And how he was telling this to his mother so that he could, help her accept Jesus and be saved. And he wasn't getting along very well with his mother. Yeah. And, even though he, out of such great kindness, was trying to convert her, and he didn't understand why his mother was so not conforming to what he wanted. And I was sitting there going, I understand why. Because he was really pushing. Yeah. Because even with me, he was pushing. He said, what did he say? He had some little books. So he wanted to share his little books with me. Because we were on a long flight. He was talking. And so I said, oh, yes, I'll accept your little books. And I have a little book about Buddhism. Will you accept it? And he froze. Yeah. He was a young man. He must have been like 18, 19. He completely froze. And he didn't know what to do. Yeah. And then he said, my pastor would not like me to accept that. And so then I said, then unfortunately I'm not able to accept your gift either. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping maybe it made him think a little bit. Then there was another flight. I don't know why I'm telling you all these stories. But there was another flight seated next to somebody this man was older. He must have been in his 40s because he had several children. And we started, I was flying back. I dressed like this, so what are you? And I told him, and, we started talking. And so he, again, started telling me about how I should accept Jesus so I don't go to hell. And I decided with this person to take a little bit of a different tact. And I said, I'm quite offended by your telling me that I'm going to hell. Because I live an ethical life.